Normally we dismiss the kids to children's church right now, but it's the first Sunday of the month, and the first Sunday of the month is my week to teach children's church. So they are going, but before you guys run off to children's church, I wanted to see if the kids wanted to come up here with me for a second and hang out with me for a minute. Just come here. Willow, thank you for being enthusiastic. Here, you know what, Caden? We'll come down. Oh, you can get it. No? Yeah, you can do it. Yep. Oh, I didn't plan this very well. I don't know where we're going. Sit down. Yep, cool. Come on up. Yeah, come hang out with me. Come here, guys. Come here, Glory. Come sit down right here. Come have a seat. I don't know where I'm going to stand. I really did not think this out very well. Helen and Hazel in your Christmas sweaters. That makes my day. Here, everybody scoot. Okay, here, scoot this way. Scoot that way. You guys are getting a little glimpse of what it's like back in children's church. I'm sure it's really controlled and well organized on the other weeks, but I'm not strong enough to. Winnie, did you see my candy?
Yes.
What makes you think that's for you? No, it's not for you. It's for me. It's just mine. I'm going to eat it. Oh, you're right. It is children's church. Okay, I'm going to stand here. So turn around and face me this way. Okay. Oh, wait. I wrote something down. Okay, I have a question for you guys. Okay? I have a question for you. How many of you guys, sometimes your parents tell you no? Anybody? Mm-hmm. You're 5, so I bet you've been told no a lot. You're 2, I bet you're getting there. You're getting there. You're 2. How many of you guys, sometimes your parents tell you no to something you really, really want? Anybody? What's something, anybody willing to tell me, what's something that you have wanted or you want to do that your parents said, no, you're not doing that? Anybody willing to tell me one? Share me one. Winnie, tell me something that you wanted that your parents said no. Your grandma said no to you. She's a good grandma then. Okay, Winnie, tell me something. Too many toys. So you've wanted more toys and your parents said, no, we got enough toys. Okay, what about you, Alana? Or Willow. I'm sorry, Willow. What's something? No more big monkeys. Yes. Lucy, what's something? No, Lucy, you don't get to answer, okay? You might not have the right answer and people might judge. You have a good one? Okay, Lucy, what's something that someone has told you no before? To having a dog. That's true. Please don't judge us. We don't want a dog. You want it at your house? Don't tell my daughter, okay? Because she really wants a dog. Okay, Grace, what's something that your parents have told you no? Another puppy. There's a theme here. Okay, let me ask you guys a question. Do your parents tell you no because they're mean? Are you sure? Do they tell you no because they think it's fun when you're upset? No? Why do they tell you no?
Because they just don't want us to have that thing.
They just don't want you to have that thing? Do they have any reasons for this? Or are they just like, nah, no, not that. What do you think, Caden?
Candy?
Candy? Do they tell you no to candy?
Eating a lot of candy. No, they'd say no. If I try to eat a lot of candy.
Okay, why do they do that?
Because they don't want me to get sick.
They don't want you to get sick.
Daddy lets me eat a lot of candy.
Daddy lets you eat a lot of candy. Okay, that's good to know.
When his pants are in the wash, we have to find candy in the pocket.
When his pants are in the washer, you have to find candy in the pockets. Okay. Are you allowed to do that, or is this just something you're just doing for fun? No. Okay. He does that. Okay. Okay, here's another question. You ready? How many of you guys, do your parents make you do something you don't want to do? Has that ever happened to you? Yes. Yes. Okay. Who's willing to tell me what's something your parents make you do that you really don't want to do that thing? Hazel, what's something that your parents make you? They make you what? change out of your pajamas. You know what? I wish that no one ever had to change out of their pajamas, and I'm sorry your parents make you do that. That is not very nice. What's something else that your parents make you do that you don't want to do? Lucy, you're going to kill me up here right now. Okay, well, let's see what Max has. Max, what's something your parents make you do? Wake up early on school days. Man, I'm sorry your parents are so cruel to you. I am so sorry you're experiencing that harsh. Grace, what's something your parents make you do? Clean your room. Pick up your clothes when they're dirty and put them in the wash. How dare they? Okay, now I have a question. Why do they make you do all of these very terrible, cruel things that they're making you do? Lucy.
To take care of the house if you have to clean up your room or that stuff.
To take care of the house, yes. Okay, let me let you guys in on something that if you learn this now.
Is it just the little ones?
No, it's all of you. It's all of them, too. I hope they're paying attention to me, okay? Let me let you in on something that if you learn this now, I love that you just leaned forward, Caden. That makes me feel like you're really listening.
I am listening.
Your parents tell you no sometimes and make you do things you don't want to do sometimes because they really, really love you. And
Why did they do that?
great question, Winnie, because you guys, I can tell, are incredibly intelligent, very smart. But guess what? Your brains aren't all the way developed, and you're still really young. And you need help making the best decisions for yourself. What do you think would happen if all of your parents and grandparents, the people that take care of you, what do you think would happen to you if they all said, you know what? I really think that Ethan, he's ready to just make his own decisions. You know what? I really think Brenna, I think she's got this. I'm just going to let her do whatever she wants to do. Helen, what would happen to all of you? Lots of bad stuff. A lot of bad stuff. Yes, a lot of bad stuff. You know what? Your moms and dads, the people that take care of you, they love you so much that they can see things that you can't see. They know stuff. I know it's hard to believe, but they know stuff that you don't know. And they care about you so much that they're willing to make rules that maybe aren't fun because they actually know that it's better for you. You know what? When my boys were little, Jonah and Caleb, they're too cool to be up here because they're old now. But when they were little, they always wanted to ride their scooters in the street, okay? They wanted to ride their scooters in the street. Now, sometimes I would go out there with them, and Daniel, my husband, and I would stand on one end, and we would kind of pay attention to what's happening in the street, and we'd let them ride right there. Do you think that'd be a good idea if we weren't outside with them?
I like my Minnie Mouse bike. Yes? I like my Minnie Mouse bike.
You ride your Minnie Mouse bike? Yeah, but you probably shouldn't ride it in the street or like on State Road 3. That is not something you should do. Why don't your parents just let you do anything you want?
I like his Paw Patrol bike.
Oh, his Paw Patrol bike? Yeah. What are you going to say, Caden?
Let them do it on the sidewalk.
On the sidewalk is also good. Good answer. Your parents give you these rules because they want you to be okay. And you know what? Someday, you guys aren't going to be this little. Someday, you're going to go from this to an adult. And guess who's going to be responsible for your choices then? Everybody do this. Your own self. Your parents want you to grow up to be healthy and whole and good and kind and joyful people. And they have to teach you how to do that right now. And sometimes it's not very fun. But some of you guys might think that when you grow up, you don't have anybody to obey anymore. Like, I'm going to grow up, and then I can do whatever I want. It's going to be so great. But guess what? I still have somebody to obey too. And that's God.
Mom and Dad, the whole entire world.
You're going to obey your parents till you, what?
I know my mom, Dad. My mom, Dad. My daddy made. My dad made
Rachel, I know your mom.
Dad made Zach.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you guys something. I'm going to give you a piece of candy in a second. But hold on.
You said that was for you.
I was Just kidding. I want you to remember something, okay? I want you to remember this. Your parents have rules for you because they love you very much. And God is our Father in heaven. And just like our parents know way better than we do, God knows better than we do what's good for us, even when we're old, like me. I am a mom, and I can do pretty much whatever I want now, right? Because I'm a grown-up. But that doesn't mean that I just do whatever I want. I still have to listen to God, and I still have to consider what he says, and I have to trust that I don't actually know what's better for me. He knows what's better for me. Now, I know that you might want to eat this whole bowl of candy, but we're not going to do that because that would not be good for us. But how about you guys take one piece of candy?
2 pieces of candy.
Let's go with one, Winnie, okay? One piece of candy. And then if you're going to children's church, you can show them how good and sweet and chill you are, and you can go on back to children's church. Okay, so take one, and you can head to children's church, okay? Does that sound like a plan? I'm sorry that I can't hang out with you in children's church. I'm going to hang out with these guys today instead, okay? Do you think they will listen to me as well as you do? Do you think that they will shout their memory verse like you guys do? No, they probably won't. All right, stand up. Okay, stand up. You want a different one? Here, grab that one. That's good. All right, who wants to lead the way? Grace, will you lead the way?
I don't want to leave the
All right,
way.
everybody stand up. Stand up. Okay, you want to lead the way, Bentley? You head right down there. You lead everybody off. You sit with your dad. Okay. If you're supposed to go back to your mom or your dad, Berkeley just lost her name tag. We're doing fine up here. We're doing fine. Okay. Head on back. You guys did so well. Emmett, someone, there you go. Yep. That was so fun. That was really fun. Oh, wait. The reason that I wanted to do that today, well, there's more than one reason. Would you lose your candy? Oh, that really matters. Let's take care of that problem.
So before we have tears.
Here you go, Eli. Which one do you want? Is that the one? Yep, it's perfect. That's the one I would pick too. There you go. Okay. The reason I asked if I could bring the kids up today is, well, partly because I was going to miss seeing them because I really like the Sunday that I'm in there, but it's also because today we are talking about God as our Father and the discipline of God in our life as his children. And I wanted us to have this very visual reminder. You look at kids and they are crazy. They are helpless without us. They think they have got things figured out, but they don't. I mean, imagine if we set them loose and said, go live your lives, kids. That would end in utter destruction. But we grow up, and we think that once we become adults, we grow up with that mindset of when I'm an adult, I'm going to do whatever I want. And we get to adulthood, and we actually think that we do know how to take care of ourselves, and we know what's best for us, and we've got this figured out. And the truth is, we are really not any different than these little guys. We still need instruction. We still need guidance. We still need a father who knows way better for us how to live. And so I wanted to give us that visual reminder. I also asked my kids to help me read the scripture today. Hold on, though. I'll tell you to do that in a second. And we're calling an audible because the beginning of the week, the boys were like, no, and Lucy was like, yes, and then we got here, and they're like, we all want to do it, so just bear with us, okay? We're just rolling with it. But I want to pray for us before we get started and just ask the Lord to speak to us. God, thank you for this day. Thank you for the sunshine. Thank you for fall. Thank you for our church family. God, thank you for loving us as a perfect father. Thank you for your patience with us when we are stubborn, when we think we know what's best, when we don't want to do what you tell us to do. You love us anyway, and we need that, God, and we're thankful that you're such a good parent to us. Help us now to hear from you. Help me to be faithful with the words I say. Amen. Okay, so it's kind of old school today. I made notes. And if you picked them up, I have little notes. If you have a pen and you want to follow along, it is a throwback. You know what? Having a children's time up here, that's kind of a throwback too. It's like we're back to the mid-90s church style today. If you have this and you want to get it out, we're also going to be in Hebrews chapter 12, and I want to ask you to actually turn there. If you have a Bible, turn to Hebrews chapter 12. If you don't have a Bible, look it up on your phone so that you can actually read the words. We can read the words together. And I am going to ask whichever of my children are going to come read. Come on up here and read. Lucy, yes. Caleb, yep. Jonah, you're later, Jonah. You're going to read Lamentations. You sit down. We got another verse for you. You guys ready to read? Hebrews chapter 12. We are going to be, that's too tall for you, isn't it?
No, I can read from here.
You think so? Okay. Hebrews chapter 12, we're going to start in verse 5. Lucy, here's this on. Check. Here, see if that's on. Say hello.
Hello?
Do I need to push it? Try again.
Hello?
Nope.
It's not
I know. I'm not good at technology. That's Dad's thing. I don't know what I'm doing.
Hello?
Nope.
Hello, it should be on.
Nope.
Number 5, David? 5, thank you.
There it is.
David, you're awesome.
Thanks,
Thank
David.
You.
Okay, scoot over here a little bit. I'm going to hold this. Okay, we are in Hebrews chapter 12. Please follow along. I'm reading out of the NLT, the New Living Translation. I'm going to have Lucy read. We're going to start in verse 5. We're going to read verses 5 through 11. Lucy, I'm going to hold it down here so that you can read. Why don't you read from here to 9. And Caleb, you can read verses 10 and 11, okay? All right, Lucy, verse 5.
And have you forgot the encouraging words God spoke to you as his children? He said, "My child, don't make light of the Lord's discipline, and don't give up when he corrects you. For the Lord disciplines those he loves, and he punishes each one he accepts as his child. As you endure this divine discipline, remember that God is treating you as his own children. Whoever heard of a child who has never been disciplined by his father? If God doesn't discipline you as he does all of his children, it means that you are
You could do it.
illegitimate
You got it.
and are not really his children at all. Since we respected our earthly fathers who disciplined us, shouldn't we submit even more to the discipline of the Father of our spirits and live forever?
Okay, now give it to Caleb. Good job, Luce. Caleb, 10 and 11.
For our earthly fathers disciplined us for a few years, doing the best they knew how. But God's discipline is always good for us, so that we might share in his holiness. No discipline is enjoyable while it is happening. It's painful, but afterward there will be a peaceful harvest of right living for those who are trained in this way.
Good job, guys. Can you guys clap for them? That was really good. Why don't you go sit down? Good job. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to read it one more time too. Hebrews 12, 5 through 11. And have you forgotten the encouraging words God spoke to you as his children? God said, "My child, don't make light of the Lord's discipline, and don't give up when he corrects you. For the Lord disciplines those he loves, and he punishes each one he accepts as his child." As you endure this divine discipline, remember that God is treating you as his own children. Who ever heard of a child who's never disciplined by its father? If God doesn't discipline you as he does all of his children, it means that you are illegitimate and are not really his children at all. Since we respected our earthly fathers who disciplined us, shouldn't we submit even more to the discipline of the Father of our spirits and live forever? For our earthly fathers disciplined us for a few years, doing the best they knew how, but God's discipline is always good for us, so that we might share in his holiness. No discipline is enjoyable while it's happening. It's painful. but afterward there will be a peaceful harvest of right living for those who are trained in this way. I want to give you a little bit of background on the book of Hebrews and what is going on when this is written, okay? There is a little bit of a risk in teaching on this passage because the risk of this passage is, and I'm going to talk about how the hard things that we go through in our life, the losses, which a lot of us in this room are experiencing loss right now, the pain, the challenges. I'm going to talk about how the Lord wants to use those experiences in our lives as a way to discipline us. But the risk is that you might hear me say that all the bad things that happen are God just causing pain and suffering and problems to teach us lessons. And that's not good theology. That's not what this passage is actually about. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's going on in this passage so we understand what is the perspective we're supposed to have. So the book of Hebrews is an interesting book in the Bible. We don't know who wrote it. It's one of the few books that we don't know who the author was. But from reading the book, we can tell that the author was a pastoral leader. And the people that he's writing this to, he knew well and cared for very much. And we don't know who it's to. So we don't know who the recipients of this book are. But again, by reading it, we figure out that these are people, see if you can relate to this. These are a group of people who we know they were second generation Christians. Okay, so they weren't people who were with Jesus himself. They were the people that the apostles taught and raised up. And these guys are a group of, they're a congregation that are growing weary. They're tired. Life has beaten them down. Probably these people thought that by now Jesus was going to come back, and he hasn't. And they're going through hard times, and they're just like a ragtag group of people that are like, is it even worth it to keep trying to have faith? This is hard. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we trying to do this follow Jesus thing? He's still not back. Life is really tough. The author of Hebrews is writing to them to say, you can do this. Yes, life is hard. Life is hard for everybody. Yes, following Jesus is its own particular difficulty, but you can do this. Keep going. Don't give up. That's the heart of this passage, okay? If you want to look at your little notes, if you've got a pen, here's the point of what we get from this passage. God disciplines us because he loves us. He loves us. And he wants us to grow up to be like him. Guys, I just realized that this passage says 4, 5, 6. Does your paper say 4, 5, 6 on these points? I don't know what I did. Doesn't matter. God disciplines us because he loves us and he wants us to grow up to be like him. So in the passage, when I was taking notes about this passage, I just kept referring to the writer of Hebrews as the pastor. The pastor was saying to his people this. So as he starts out, he quotes Proverbs, and he quotes a passage in Proverbs that says, don't make light of the Lord's discipline and don't give up when he corrects you. For the Lord disciplines those he loves, and he punishes each one he accepts as his child. And then he goes on, and I think there's 3 points that we can get out of this little passage about God's discipline. Number 1, or number 4, if your page says number 4. It's like the Star Wars movies. We don't have any rhyme or reason to the numbers on them. Number 1/4. This passage tells us, number 1, that God's discipline proves that he loves us, because the only children who aren't disciplined are those who are abandoned or unloved. If God really loves us as a father, then he takes responsibility for us. I work with a lot of kids. So my job, I am the area director for Henry County Young Life, and I spend a lot of time with kids. Those kids aren't my children. I love them a lot, but it isn't my responsibility to discipline them like it is to discipline my own children. I try to teach them, I try to love them, I try to model for them, but I don't feel that responsibility for them like I do for Jonah, Caleb, and Lucy. Jonah, Caleb, and Lucy, it is my job, it is my responsibility to discipline them because I love them. God's discipline in your life proves that you are his child. You are his son. You are his daughter. You're not his slave. You're not his subject. You're his kid. And he loves you. And that's why he disciplines us. The second thing I think this passage tells us about God's discipline, number 2 or number 5, is that the older we get, the more that we recognize that discipline and correction are actually helpful and good. Okay, take a second and turn to someone next to you and think of something that your parents made you do that you hated doing and share that with someone next to you. What's something that your parents made you do that you hated it as a kid? Can you remember that? Yeah, Bjorn, say it into the microphone. No, just kidding. What's something your parents made you do as a kid that you hated? Hated doing. Lots of things. I am not trying to set you up for family therapy, so if you've got things you need to talk about later, that's great. But anybody want to yell out something that you hated doing as a kid that your parents made you do? Doing what? Drying silverware. Man, your parents were mean. I can't believe they made you do that. What else? Get along with siblings. What a crazy expectation that you would do that. Anything else? What's something you hated doing as a kid? Going to school. The nerve that they made you go to school. Eat broccoli. So when we're kids, nobody as a kid loves the fact that our parents have control over us. No one loves that. When we're little, we see it just like these guys saw it as, can't believe my parents do this to me. The older we get, the more we understand how absolutely necessary the discipline of our parents is. It's necessary. I think about my children, and I think about how they would fare if I just let them do whatever they wanted to do. Not well. They think they would, especially Jonah. He just turned 13. We're in the teenage years. Prayers and thoughts are appreciated at this time. But Jonah, they think they know, and they don't know. But as you get older, you look back and you realize, wow, I'm really glad that my dad made me fold the laundry because I knew how to fold laundry when I became an adult. I'm really glad that my parents made me go to school. What if I wouldn't have gone to school? And they just said, yeah, you know what's best. You don't have to go to school. The older we get, the more we realize that God's discipline is good for us too. We cannot do this without him. We are still undeveloped, weak, little humans that need someone who knows better than us to tell us what to do. This passage refers to, think back to when your parents disciplined you. It's reminding you. When you're a kid, you thought you didn't need that. The older you got, the more you realized, oh, I really do need that. The older we get, the more we appreciate discipline and correction. And the third one, or number 6, is that discipline and correction are necessary for us to mature and grow up and to ultimately become more like Jesus Christ. I think about my kids, and I hope that the things I'm teaching them are sinking in. And I hope that when they are adults and they're out on their own in this world, I daydream about what they might be like, and I really hope that the things I've tried to teach them, they begin to choose for themselves. I really hope when I look at Jonah and Caleb and Lucy, I want them to be healthy. I want them to be good people. I want them to be better than me. God looks at us, and that's what he wants. He uses discipline in our lives because what his goal and hope for us is that we will not stay immature. We all know adults who have not lived up to their potential. We all know adults who are still behaving like children. I am an adult who has behaved as a child many times. Discipline is necessary to help us to grow and mature, and ultimately to be like Jesus. You know, in verse 11, it says, no discipline is enjoyable while it's happening. It's painful. I remember we went through a period of time with Jonah. Man, you make so many mistakes with your first kid. I'm sorry, Jonah. You can work it out in therapy later. Just like I've worked it out in therapy later. My parents are here. I remember when Jonah was little, and he went through, a phase where he didn't need to keep getting up in the night, but he woke up in the night all the time. And Daniel and I had to make the decision, like, what do we do? Do we let him cry? That feels wrong. Do we, just like let him get in our bed? Nope, we're never doing that. What do we do? And we decided, for right or wrong, Jesus forgive me if it was wrong, Jonah forgive me if it was wrong, we decided to let him cry in his bed. That's what we were going to do. And Jonah had this ability to climb out of his crib at such a young age that I feel like we should be utilizing that for some kind of like sport or something that you can get paid to do, because Jonah could climb out of his bed at 9 months old. So Jonah started just climbing out of his bed. And so what Daniel would do, is every time he'd get up, Daniel would just pick him up, walk him back, put him in his crib, shut the door, and go out. And I remember the night we decided, this is it. We're just going to let him cry. Oh, and it was a long night. Remember that night, Daniel? We'll never forget that night. It lasted all night. Jonah screamed and cried, and every single time he would come in our room screaming and crying, Daniel would pick him up, walk him back, put him in his bed, give him a little kiss while he's screaming, walk back down to our room, over and over. I can't even tell you how many times that lasted. It was killer for me. I just sat in our room and cried and thought, I'm definitely ruining this child and messing this whole thing up. But the next day, he never got up, never again. Now, I am not like advocating for cry it out. Please don't write me letters about that. All I'm saying is Daniel stuck to it, even when it felt not good, because we were trying to teach a little person who didn't understand that he has to stay in his bed and he has to sleep or he'll get sick. And we'll get sick and we'll lose our minds. And that night was long and that night was hard and nobody enjoyed it. And that's how God is with us. God doesn't discipline us as this cruel puppet master going, man, I just love it when these guys are ticked off. I love it when these guys are unhappy. God felt exactly like I felt, more so, as I sat in my bed that night and just cried while Daniel patiently, lovingly, consistently kept showing Jonah what we were going to do. God doesn't delight in hurting us, wounding us, teaching us lessons sadistically. God knows what we need, and sometimes what we need does not feel good. So let's look at the second part. We know what it looks like when our parents discipline us. These children gave us lots of examples. What does it look like when God disciplines us? What is this passage even talking about? How do we know when God is disciplining us? God doesn't come down from heaven and give us consequences verbally. So what does it mean, okay? Here are a few things that I think God's discipline can look like. First bullet point. Sometimes God tells us no. Or at least he says, not yet. God tells us no. Or not yet. Man, there are so many times I can think that I have begged for something. And I really thought that's what I needed. And God did not give it to me. God tells us no. When Jonah was in 5th grade, he started asking for a cell phone. because literally most of the kids in his class in 5th grade had one. And I work with teenagers, and I know too much, and I was like, no, Jonah, this isn't the right decision for you. And it was really hard to tell him no. And I think one good thing about me being a person who works with teenagers is I really do, like I kind of get what it's like to be a kid, and I felt for him. I was like, I know, it stinks to be the person who doesn't have a phone. And for 2 years, we told him no, 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 no. That was really hard to do as a parent, and I know it was hard for him. But we had to make that decision because we had information that Jonah did not have. God has information about you and who you are and your future and what you need that you don't have. And sometimes we as little kids, we feel like little kids, we're like begging God for something, and he says no, and it feels like he's being cruel, but we have to remember he knows things we don't know. God tells us no. Second thing that God's discipline looks like sometimes God may not fix or take away our problems. My kids, Caleb especially, has a terrible habit of taking off whatever he is using and throwing it wherever it lands and leaving all the lights on, and he just leaves it. I am like a recovering control freak. I am learning not to just go over there and pick it all up and do it for him, but to actually make him come back. And it's annoying and it takes longer. I need you to come back and I need you to fix this yourself. Because if I don't make you do it yourself, you're never going to stop doing it, and I'm going to be picking this up the rest of my life. A good parent does not fix everything for their kids or take away their problems. My kids have to learn how to do those things for themselves. If every time they come against some adversity, I just step in and, okay, I'll just do it like I want to, they will never learn and grow. In our lives, we can all think of problems right now that we are dealing with that we really wish God would fix. I'll tell you one of mine. I have been super frustrated with God lately and I've been like, why aren't you fixing this? So one thing I have to do for my job is fundraise. It's really hard. It's really, really hard. I did not go into ministry to fundraise. I went into ministry to love and pastor kids, and it's a hard part of my job. The past 2 years, we have been in deficit a lot, and it freaks me out every time I look at the budget, and it's overwhelming all the time. And I have prayed and asked God so many times, God, would you please just send somebody to give me $1 million so I don't have to do this anymore? He has not answered that prayer. Although I would ask you to join me in that prayer because it will be awesome. He doesn't fix it. And I am realizing, because a good parent doesn't fix problems, God isn't doing that to be mean to me. God hasn't forgotten about me. One thing that I'm learning through that is God is teaching me how to really trust him when on paper it doesn't look great. God knows I need that. God may not fix your problems. That's not him being cruel. He might just have something he's trying to do in you through that. The third bullet point, God lets us experience consequences. Sometimes, so my favorite passage in the Bible is the story of the prodigal son. And if you've never read that story, it's a story about a son who is basically really selfish and takes all his inheritance, runs off, blows it, makes a mess of his life, shames his family, but he comes back to his father at the end of his rope. And I love the story because the dad doesn't stand there and give him the dad speech. He actually doesn't even address the thing that the son did wrong. He just runs and embraces him. It's my favorite story. It says so much about who God is and how he views us. And yet, sometimes we take that story and we're like, cool, doesn't matter what I do. I'm covered and I'm forgiven. And that's not true. God actually really, really, really cares what I do. and he really, really cares what you do. And there are consequences for our sinful choices. God loves us no matter what, but the actions that we take and the choices that we make determine a lot about our life. A good parent lets a kid suffer consequences, and God has to do that with us as well. You know, I was thinking the other day about how obedience is just not a very popular thing to teach about. And I do outreach ministry, and so I'm spending a lot of my time just introducing kids to who Jesus is. And sometimes I feel like I'm really leaving something out, because following Jesus isn't just about accepting that God loves you exactly as you are. It is that, totally. But following Jesus is also about entering a relationship with the God of the universe and submitting to him fully and trusting that he knows what's best and I don't know what's best. And that's hard. Obedience is hard. But God lets us experience consequences. And the last one, sometimes God's discipline, this is a hard one. God allows us to suffer loss. It's really hard to think about the losses of our life and think about the fact that God could prevent all of those things, but he doesn't. Now, I want to say, again, because we want to have good theology, the world is messed up and broken because of sin. That's why the world is messed up and broken. The world is messed up and broken, and things are falling apart everywhere, not because we've got a cruel God who's in heaven saying, I'm punishing those jerks. No. We have chosen disobedience from the beginning of time, and this world is under a curse, and it's rough. My son was not born with a heart defect because God is punishing me. There isn't war and famine and earthquakes because God is punishing us. But he does allow us to suffer loss. One thing that when we are facing loss that it is so important to not do is to ask why. There is no answer to that question. Why did somebody you love die? Because the world's broken. That's why. Why was my son born with half a heart? Because the world is broken. Thank God someday the world is going to be made new. And those things won't be a part of our existence anymore. But right now they are. Right now it is. And that's the reason. Please, please, church family, please don't comfort each other by being quick to say, God has a reason. God has a reason for your suffering. God works his purposes out of all suffering. But we need to be careful that we don't make it sound like God's causing our pain and suffering for his purposes. God works all things together for the good of those who love him. That's what he does. God took my son's junk heart and made an amazing story for our family. That's beautiful. That's redemptive. But if my mindset is that God made that happen to teach me a lesson, then I'm not going to have a very good picture of God. God allows us to suffer loss. He is with us in our loss. Sometimes loss is not just death. Sometimes it's the loss of our expectations, our hopes, our comfort. Sometimes the thing that we lose is something that we cause because we did something really stupid. Sometimes it's something we had no control over. But God is with us in our loss, and he allows us to walk through loss. And if we'll have the perspective that he is with us and is working good, then we will be a part of his redemptive purposes in those ugly things. I want to read Lamentations 3. If Lamentations is a book you haven't read much, I would recommend that you check it out. It's a good post-COVID world reading. I read it so little I can't even find it. There it is. Lamentations 3. Jonah, do you want to come and read? You want to do that for me? I'm going to ask Jonah to read this passage. Lamentations 3. I'd love if you look it up or look it on your phone. Yeah, you want to read it on your phone?
Sure.
Or are you going to read it on my Bible? Okay. We're going to read Lamentations 3, verses 19 to 33.
Okay.
Got that?
The thought of my suffering.
No, it's off again.
Oh.
Okay, I don't know if it's me. Hello, no. It's okay. I didn't prepare you for that.
Okay.
There we go. There we go.
The thought of my suffering and homelessness is bitter beyond words. I will never forget this awful time as I grieve over my loss. Yet I still dare to hope when I remember this. The faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. Great is his faithfulness. His mercies begin afresh each morning. I say to myself, the Lord is my inheritance, therefore I will hope in him. The Lord is good to those who depend on him, to those who search for him. So it is good to wait quietly for salvation from the Lord, and it is good for people to submit at an early age to the yoke of his discipline. Let them sit alone in silence beneath the Lord's demands. Let them lie face down in the dust, for there may be hope at last. Let them turn the other cheek to those who strike them and accept the insults of their enemies. For no one is abandoned by the Lord forever. Though he brings grief, he also shows compassion because of the greatness of his unfailing love. For he does not enjoy hurting people or causing them sorrow.
Thanks, buddy. Good job. Okay. I love verse 33. God does not enjoy hurting people or causing them sorrow. Though he brings grief, he also shows compassion. Today, I hope that I have just brought you back in your mind to the fact that you are still a son and a daughter who is very much in need of a father who knows better than you, knows better than me. And for a way to close, this is what I want to do. At the bottom of our little notes, just ask these questions. Where in your life is God trying to discipline and shape you? Where is he telling you no? Where is he allowing a problem to persist? Where are you experiencing consequences for your decisions? Where are you suffering loss? Have you thought of those things as God's activity in your life to mold and shape and form you? Are you resisting him? Or are you submitting to him? Can you trust, will you trust that he knows what is truly best for your life? You know, the end of that passage in Hebrews says that God disciplines us. So that eventually there will be, and listen to this phrase, this is the goal, a peaceful harvest of right living. A peaceful harvest. God wants us to have this peaceful confidence that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, that we are who we're supposed to be, that our life is well lived. Peaceful harvest of right living. God wants us to grow up and look like our dad. That's his goal. He wants us to look like him. We're going to take a couple minutes of silence. I know it's almost 12, and we just had daylight savings time, so it's really 1, and we're all really hungry. And I appreciate that. But we're going to take a couple minutes of silence before we sing our final song. And I just want to say a couple things about a response time. If you've been here for a while and you wonder why at the end of the sermon we then go back and we sing again, or you think, what's the point of that? Let me just say this, okay? We don't want to be like people who hear the word and then turn around and walk away and forget it. The Bible talks a lot about meditating on his word, and that just means to sit and think on and focus on. So that's what this time is for. This time is for taking a minute and reflecting on the things that the Lord is saying to you. don't walk away and forget what God just said to you. So we're going to take a minute, and we're going to have a couple minutes of just silence. Just silence. If you want to take your little note and consider these questions at the bottom, do that. If you want to just close your eyes, do that. When the worship team comes up and plays the last song, it's just a time for you to respond to the Lord in your heart. You can also respond by coming forward. There's nothing like magical about that, but the reason we have a tradition of people coming up at the end and praying is because sometimes the Lord is speaking to you and you need to like answer him and respond to him. Do something about that. And one thing that you can do in response to that is to just come up and pray. Or grab someone to pray. I'm going to hang out down here. If you want me to pray for you, I would love to pray for you. Maybe you could also pray for me. Just don't hear the end of this and already turn your attention to what's next. Just take a second and meditate on what the Lord is saying. Worship team, if you want to come up in just a couple minutes, we're just going to sit for just a second in silence.